Fame at last, fame at last. Please take a seat. Please,
Thank
guys,
you.
take a seat. Okay, so let's just quickly talk through this. These guys, they can ask you anything, is that right?
Anything and everything.
You're an open book.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we'll test that statement as questions come through. But really, I guess what this is an opportunity for you to mentor a whole bunch of people. You get to mentor them for an hour. And so I really need you to make sure that everything you say is power-packed. Otherwise, they're not going to come back to the next event. Does it sound good?
I promise.
Okay, great. Well, just tell us, your claim to fame is what? You do chair a number of different boards. You're on a number of different organizations. You've been a CEO a number of different times in different organizations. Just drop a couple of names. Make sure that these guys understand the big wig that you actually are. Please.
So first, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You can hear me well? I was told to be myself, but I'm wired with these ugly things. How can I be myself? But the sound is perfect? Not too close to my mouth, no? Okay. So my name is Bonang Mohale. I'm absolutely privileged to have this conversation with you. Honest, open, absolutely authentic. Let's see if we can't have a conversation. Been absolutely blessed with some amazing opportunities. Township boy, born, bred and buttered in Katlehong, not too far from here. Today I've got a nice title called the Chairman of Shell South Africa. This is a company that has been in this country 112 years, and we employ, if I cheat a little bit, include half of our SAPREF employees and Blenco, 750 of our Shell service stations, 20,000 people. So last year we made earnings before expenses of 384 million US dollars. That's almost 4 billion rands close to profits.
Are you guys convinced yet, by the way? All right,
So I chair 6 legal entities. So the Shell Holdings Board, Shell Marketing, Shell Refining. I also chair the boards of Shell Energy. And then there was also a small entity called Easy Gas. We call that our LPG business. And of course, the biggest refinery in Africa, SAPREF, the SAPREF board, South African Petroleum Refinery at 180,000 barrels per day. So that's all technicality I'm going to talk about. From now on, I speak English.
Thank you. We're grateful that you will. So now you've already introduced the first question, and I would like you to just open it up a little bit and let's just give us a glance, a look into some of your background, your life growing up. How was it? Just paint a picture for us, please.
Yeah, I had a typical life. Grew up like most of these young, clever, hardworking people. Grew up in a small township called Katlehong. It used to be called Natalspruit, across the railway line. From Natalspruit, or Alberton, for that matter, went all my schooling to Mokgobeng Junior Primary, then Riahile Secondary. I still remember the principals, by the way. Mema Bucheka, Ntate Lepile Taunyane at high school, who went on to be the life president of SAFA. And then in between Tate Pake, when we were doing our Form 1s until Form 5, you call them grade 8, I suppose, up to grade 12. And then had the most amazing ambition. I looked around the township. Who are the people who have got the most money, biggest houses, and the biggest cars? And they were typically doctors, lawyers, nurses. And then I went to medical school. Vets, not too far from here. And I did MBBCH. Spent 4 glorious years. On the 17th of April, 1984, it then dawned on me that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life looking down people's throats to an area that big to figure out whether it's laryngitis, pharyngitis, or tonsillitis. All I wanted to be is a manager. But I'd never seen a manager in my life. I'd never hugged one. I've never engaged, interacted, and interfaced with one. So I decided to go and work. So I worked for a company called Pfizer with a P, where I spent 11 years in pharmaceuticals. Came in at janitorial level as a professional sales representative. By the end of the 11 years, I was on their board, looking after the whole of Africa and reporting directly to the CEO. Does that help?
That certainly helps me. Does it help you guys? Okay, excellent. So let's get right down to it. So this event is called Meet the CEO. You've been a CEO a number of times. Here's the question, and let's kick it off with this. What do CEOs actually do? What do they actually do?
Actually, very little.
Yeah, is it golf? Is it golf all day?
Yeah, something like that.
What do CEOs do?
Yeah, so when I started to be called CEO, I was actually called Managing Director of the world's biggest and oldest elevator company, Otis. They are in Hartford, Connecticut. It's part of United Technologies Corporation. UTC had 5 subsidiaries. Otis, we made lifts. Carrier, they made air conditioners. Sikorsky, they made helicopters. Pratt & Whitney, they made jet engines. Hamilton Sandstrand, they made environmental products. Suits that are worn by astronauts. Toilets for space shuttle 11 up to 13. And 3 of those 5 were in aerospace. So what do CEOs actually do? So theoretically, it's about getting things done through other people. So that's called management. Some of you who've read your Management 101. But what really energizes me, really turns me on and puts me on fire is this notion called leadership. To be genuinely obsessed with the development of others. Because by the time you are called managing director, you've been there, done that, you probably have a t-shirt to show for it. You've got all the glory that you can possibly get. You then ask yourself and say, but what legacy can I leave? And there's an amazing opportunity to really touch other people's lives in a very meaningful way. So when I say something at Shell, 20,000 people are likely to hear and listen to me, purely and simply because of my positional power. Now, to shift that positional power to a role of influencing, to be a force for change, to be given an opportunity to be a chief servant, to serve, and the best amongst us, serve with a heart of a servant.
I want to jump in here, if I may, because a lot of us sometimes we think, wow, if I can only be the CEO, I can have this positional power. But what you've really highlighted here is there are 2 different forms of power, right? There is positional power. So if you're in a great organization, in a good office, you are going to have power. But when you walk out that door, what happens to the power? I mean, it's limited. It really is very limited to the organization or the structure that you're in. However, if you are in a position or holding a different kind of power, and let's talk about that for a little bit longer, that changes. And I think of a Nelson Mandela, for example, an easy target. Was his power to you, to me, positional, or was it authentic? Was it genuine? Absolutely genuine. So let's talk about this genuine, authentic power. How do you get it? Where does it come from? You've said leadership, but there are so many books out there that say leaders do this or leaders do that. You've got it nicely. You said that there's an influence there. There's power, authentic power. What is that?
I hope that's not my pacemaker that's making the noise.
It's not mine.
So I'll try and be calm. You know, the way I think about it, in fact, when you Google the word leadership, you have about 257 hits. There is more written about leadership than any other topic. There's more that is written about leadership than about religion, for instance. So the way I think about it is, you know, you've got power. What I would like and aspire to have is energy. So power, it's like the ski boat. You get on top of this thing, you turn the throttle, it has 354 kilojoules of energy. As you turn this thing, the nose points up and it wants to fly. Whoa! And you really feel like you are in control. But by definition, power has a radius. So if you go to Hartbeespoort Dam, it probably has a 3-kilometer radius. If you go too far into the middle of the ocean, you'll come back pushing it. Whereas energy, on the other hand, it's less sexy, it's less powerful. It's like having a catamaran or a sailboat. So sailboat is quiet. It's not like a V8 or a V12. You don't hear that grumbling sound like a Maserati. But by changing, harnessing the power, the force, the impetus of the wind, you can circumnavigate the world, not once, but as many times as you want. It is not boastful. You can hear it from a mile away, but yes, it is effective, it is efficient. So I've always aspired to move away from power to having energy. When I talk to my people, to energize them. Power is the one that says, you will do because I say so. Energy says, can I explain to you why it's important to do certain things so that even in my absence, you are motivated, inspired, touched to still do it anyway. Because management is what happens when you are there. Leadership is what happens when you are not there. If you think about it in township terms, young men and women, they dream. Older people do. Energy, it's about doing. Power, it's about dreaming.
Okay, I like that. I like how you've said that. Did everyone write that down? I don't see any pens going. I hope you're writing the stuff down. By the way, there's a really nice little proverb. I'm going to call it a proverb. A nice saying that says, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. So if you're not writing it down, I'm going to come and try and find you guys next week, and I'll test you on it, and I can guarantee you're probably not going to remember. So write it down. Write the stuff down, or download the podcast. That's probably why you're not writing it down. Let's go back to when you were a bit of a younger executive, a little bit closer to our age. Although you look 34, but I know you're not. When you were young, you obviously made a couple of mistakes along your journey. Just give us an idea, maybe you can tell a story about it, of one of the mistakes that you made that you would just coin down to simple naivety, something that you just couldn't have seen because you'd never experienced it before. A story, a principle, a lesson that you've learned as a result?
Yeah, this is an important question because, we were brought up by grandmothers, and they've got a wonderful expression, our grandmothers, that says, he that makes no mistakes probably does nothing. So to be where we are, we make lots of mistakes. In fact, we learn more from those things that we do not get right the first time than from those that we do. Because all of us must be given an opportunity to make our own mistakes. But on a new day, it will be foolish to make an old mistake. So I made many mistakes, because if you don't, then it means you are not learning. It's like if you are not growing, you know that you are dying. Exactly the same way that there are only two types of companies, the quick and the dead. So there are people who are learning and those that are busy dying as we talk today. So for me, the one mistake that I remember in the business world, I was in pharmaceuticals, working for a company called Pfizer. I had a nice budget, a corner office, a beautiful, powerful car, of course, comes with the job. But I spent 20 million rand launching a product for reducing high blood pressure. It's called hypertension. Too early, I learned in hindsight. Because at that time, we had Renitec, which is an ACE inhibitor that reduces this high blood pressure. 4 years into this product, we decided to launch another one called Prenaval. 20 million rand just on marketing. 6 months into the field, we learned that instead of selling more, people were switching from Renitec to Prenaval, which we just launched, and that's not what we wanted. It was a very humbling experience to walk into Dennis Smith's office at that time, who was the country manager, to say, I got it wrong. Instead of increasing our sales, we cannibalizing. We had marketing or promotional material from the floor to the roof, gold and Parker pen and pencil sets that we're giving to GPs at that time, and to can a 20 million rand marketing campaign when you are probably less than 29 years old was a very humbling experience. But I survived. He told me that that's probably the most expensive mistake he's ever seen, but he allowed me to keep the job.
Well, very fortunate that he allowed you. He obviously saw what we now see, but he was a visionary, perhaps. Hey?
I probably threatened him that you can't fire the only black man in the organization.
That's actually a good tactic to use. Nonkululeko, where are you? You've asked a question, right? How do you keep the inspiration or an inspirational spirit alive in a large organization? You said 22,000 people. How do you keep them inspired? How do you keep them moving and wanting to do more? Is that, have we captured your question? Okay, perfect. There we go.
Not easy, because all of us are human, which means we feel happy. Sometimes we feel sad. We are energized. Sometimes we don't want to get out of bed. But what I find really works for me is to remind myself of very few simple things. So if you are looking for inspiration and motivation from your supervisor, you are likely to get disappointed. If you're looking at it from your lover, there are some days when your lover will not be there. If you are looking at it from your friends sometimes go on holiday. You are likely to lose it. So I find I always remind myself that I actually work not for Shell, but for me, myself, I. That if I do well, I continue to climb the corporate ladder of success. And if I don't do well, I've got nobody to blame but myself. So to be self-motivated and self-inspired. So when I'm in the presence of a colleague who speaks bad of me, who does not like my perfume, sometimes the size of my nose, I always remind myself that actually I'm here working for myself. If I don't go to the office in the morning, I'm blessed with two divine daughters, who are something to live for. Because when you are young, you live for yourself. One day when you get married, you are really concerned about the other person. You move from being self-centered to being the other-centered. When you have kids, you become children-oriented. Sometimes you forget that you even have a wife in your aspiration to give them everything that you didn't have. So when I remember that I'm trying to give them a future that on a composite basis is substantially better than the one that I had, I tell myself that I shall not be demotivated. I remember a story that my father used to tell me, to say, you know, I was so poor, we grew up in the township, 4-roomed houses, they all looked the same. If you had money, you put a stoop and big windows, and sometimes a gate that closes itself. Not because it's remote control, because you have put a spring from a bicycle, so they open and then the spring pulls it back. Was if my boss told me on Friday that, you know what, you are fired. My father will take his brown envelope, used to go to the window at that time, and go home Saturday, Sunday. And Monday, before everybody else comes to the office, he'll go back to work. But Pete will look at him and say, but didn't I fire you on Friday? I say, you did, but I decided to come back to work because I've got a family to feed and I've got children to educate. Today, we've got many more options. We don't have to be at the mercy of anybody. You've got this thing called choice. Our fathers did not have choice. You can choose to be one of the 400 MPs in Jacob Zuma's administration. Or you can choose to run your own BE entity, consulting, IT company because you are clever. Or you can choose to go and run somebody's big company like I do at Shell. Or you can choose to be an entrepreneur and run your own company. These are all 4 more options than my father had. When they grew up, you went to school, and they used to scare you by saying, if you don't go to school, you see that coal truck, you'll be at the back of it delivering coal. So you ran to school to make sure that you don't. And the idea of going to school is so that you get a better job. You younger people, sometimes you refer to yourselves as millennials, you go to school because you want to explore your full potential. And you work for different things than what we used to work for. We were just lucky to get a job. You are targeting the companies that you want to work for. You want to work for SAB Miller. You want to work for Procter & Gamble or Unilever or Shell, hopefully. But there are some companies you want to work for because they don't resonate with your own values. You're looking for a sense of ownership and belonging. You're looking for companies that can give you a sense of purpose. In fact, you come to companies like Shell to be managed very differently from the way we were managed. You want to be motivated and inspired, but you want to be given space. You don't want to be supervised hour by hour. You go to Mesh, the nightclub, at 2 in the morning doing Get Down. You remember that you've got a project, you press the send button, and it still goes to your supervisor. Rather than being in a job 8 to 5 just to show your home body.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing. I mean, some personal detail there as well. We appreciate it. Tebogo, where's Tebogo? Tebogo, you've asked what is your passion and how important was it on your journey to success. Now, you're obviously not asking me, right? Yeah. So there it is. Your passion and how important was it?
Our grandmothers used to say, isn't it amazing that those people that chase money hardly have any, but those that follow their passion, they make money until it comes out of their ears. So if you look at Tiger Woods playing golf, you have a genuine sense that this man will play golf even if he does not get paid for it. Fortunately, he does what he loves and he gets paid. When he signed the Nike sponsorship, he became the first athlete to be paid $45 million in 1 year just for an endorsement before he touched any club. It was William E. Mack, the founder of a pharmaceutical company called MSD. In the US of A, it's called Mack. Outside of the US of A, it's called Merck Sharp and Dohme, or just MSD for short. Not to be confused with the German E-Merck pharmaceutical company. They have a presence in 222 countries and locations. Of course, they've got a vision statement, mission statement, but what they have in every single solitary one of their offices is the founding statement of William E. Mack, displayed prominently at every reception. And the statement simply says, we try and remember that medicines is for the people and not for the money. The more we have remembered that, the more money we have made. So this thing called passion is what drives us, it's what motivates us, it's what gets us out of bed. In a relationship fashion, sometimes we call it chemistry. You go to a nightclub, you don't know this woman from a bar of soap. You don't know how she was brought up. You don't even know whether she snores. But just from that first physical attraction, this surface tension, it's what motivates you to go across the room to say, you know what, my name is Bonang, may I chat to you? Some of you say, may I marry you? That is the closest you'll get to this thing called passion. When you start doing only those things that you love, and eventually you start loving even those things that you have to do. A lot of us want to work, you want to the corner office, but we actually hate the admin. But imagine if you did something that you're really passionate about. That occupies 80% of your time. And then the 20% is the admin. You learn to cope with it. So in life, and when you finish, we will know that we are truly free as a people with great natural endowments when you choose careers that you're really passionate about, rather than what we did. What is it that can give me the most amount of money in the shortest period of time so that I can help my mother, big Christina Mohale, at home to get out of the self-perpetuating vicious cycle of abject poverty.
So let me ask a follow-up question. So what is then your passion, and how did it come into what you do?
I've got many passions now, and they change as and when you develop and grow. By the way, I'm approaching 40. So if he says I'm his age, he's probably lying because he's more than 40. So I'm younger than him. So for somebody who is approaching 40, today in a work environment, I'm really very obsessed about planting a seed, throwing a pebble in the sea or in the pond, and watching it grow. I'm really very passionate about touching somebody in a very meaningful way. I'm really concerned about genuinely connecting. Because what you say as a chairman, as a CEO, is amplified 10 times. Imagine if you're a source of inspiration to just one soul, to say, if he comes from Katlehong, poor as I am, and he can go on to become the chairman of the world's second biggest energy company in the world, then I can do it. Then I would have done my job. Because as people, we lift as we rise. We don't wait until we are at the pinnacle of our career. We learn one or two things, and then we share it. That's how we consolidate, we deepen, and we widen our ability to connect.
Yeah, so Tebogo, I just want to add something, if I may. So I have learnt a little bit from all the leaders that I have met, and the one thing that, and you've highlighted it here, is that as we grow and develop, our passions do change. And we do move through different phases in our lives. And so your question almost seemed to ask if there was a passion that has been all the way, has been serving Bonang all the way through his life. And there probably is, but it will have developed and changed. And we must allow ourselves to have this developing, changing, growing, alive thing within us that some of us might call passion. So there's a little bit from me anyway. Right. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. So let me ask a question, because there's some good questions coming through here, but I want to ask you this question, and here's a really important one, guys. Write this stuff down. Your 3 pillars of CEO leadership, what are they? 3 pillars, and you can only choose 3.
I will cheat a little bit. I find that leaders talk straight. They extend trust. They start first with the who, then the what. That's 3. And they make it easy to recognize others. He didn't hear the last one. And I'm not even unpacking it. But if you do, I would. If you want, I would.
I'd like you to unpack it a little bit, and I'll tell you on the back of what. So Greg Solomon, he is the managing director for McDonald's South Africa, and I sat with him once, and he shared an equation that he uses, and the equation, he takes 2 metrics, trust and respect. And he looks at the person and he says, how much do I trust you and how much do I respect you? He doesn't say this to them, this is behind closed doors. And he gives them a rating out of 10. And then he takes those 2 numbers and he multiplies them. And if that person doesn't get above whatever it is, 75%, so of course 10 times 10 is 100, and we're trying to get a percentage. If they don't get over 75, then the person won't even feature in his team. That person's automatically out the door. He's not going to be pulled up. He's not going to be promoted. He's not going to be part of the organization, so to speak. So just a couple of, you use the term trust. Talk to us about this element, this thing, trust.
Yeah, so to unpack a little bit. So I started by saying leaders talk straight. It's amazing how many times we feel beholden to others. A friend that told you, apply to UJ, and then you feel like I've got to spend time, energy, and effort with this particular person. The one boss that gave you your first break and gave you a vacation job, and you feel beholden to them. The first guy to kiss you, and you say, but I'm going to write his name down so that I never forget. And yet, talking straight almost implores us to talk truth to power, to be true to ourselves, to be authentic in a very respectful manner. True leaders are the ones that are very easy to get along with, but also tell you exactly how they feel. The second part says extend trust. So I didn't say be trusted. You start first by trusting the people that you work with, because I said management is about getting things through other people. There's a wonderful book called The Art of Possibilities. This is a Harvard University professor who for 92 semesters has taken a music class and starts from first day 1, saying to his students, you know what, starting from today, you've got 100% of the marks you need at the end of the year, because I know that's how good I am as a music teacher. But I trust you to keep this 100%. From now on, you can only, by your own actions, your own application, take away from this 100%. For 32 glorious years, he's had a 100% pass at Harvard, which is not such a bad university. When you read Professor Stephen R. Covey's second book, after Principle-Centered Leadership, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about the notion that says, seek to understand before you are understood. So when you trust other people and you're really open and genuine about it, they must be the one that do something to disappoint you. Because guess what? If your boss wants you to succeed, you will succeed. And then lastly, I said, start first with the who, than the what. Because we are in the business of managing people. So when we grew up, we were told management 101, it's strategy first, then structure, then you go and find people to fill in the vacancies. Today, I've changed my mind. I start with the good people, first and foremost. And then once I've got good people, I then sit around with them and say, by the way, what is it that we're supposed to be doing? And they will help you figure out what is it that you're supposed to be doing. And what and how. But most importantly, then invest a little bit of time explaining why it is important to do the things that you do, so that even if you're not there, they can still continue. The 80% of the people that come at 8, leave at 5, doing their job without discontinuities, without innovations, without being the clever ones, but being the reliable ones that will keep the wheels of industry going.
Let me support what you've just said there. So another CEO that I've been able to, privileged to be able to sit with, Mark Kutafani is now CEO Anglo-American. I mean, that's a massive organization that he has to deal with. But he said this, and it's stayed with me forever. Leadership, and by implication business, is all about people. So there's the second witness to what you're saying. People first, the who. All right, let's get another question from our audience here. Obakeng, who's Obakeng? Oh, here we go. Obakeng, he asks, did you find that the overwhelming demands of climbing the corporate ladder affected family life? And is such a balance actually a myth? Is it a myth?
This is a very profound question. So, 1996, I'm managing director of the world's biggest and oldest elevator company. First 3 years I reported to Paris, the last 2 to Madrid, so my Spanish is actually quite good. Every year I did 10 overseas trips. That's one a month. I went to a southern part of Italy called Forte Village in Sardinia. There were 112 of us in the room. 78% of those MDs of countries were onto their second or even their third marriage. I was less than 30 when I was the MD of Otis Elevators. Less than 30. It shocked the living daylights out of me. I came back and spoke to Susan, my lovely wife, that I got married to when I was 17. And I said, looking her in the centerpiece of the pupils of her eyes, to say, moving forward, there's one thing I would never want to lose. I want to continue getting married to you. I want you to give me space to try and create some time for my community. I want you and I to explore our own spirituality so that we can really fathom out why we have been sent to be in this world at this time, at this moment, at this juncture. But most importantly, I said to her, I want to produce embarrassingly good results at work. That has been the singular 4 things that have driven me throughout life. To say, can I succeed at work and still remain married to Susan? Spend time with my 2 daughters so that they know they have a father. In 2010, 1.5 million children had never seen their father. So this notion of work-life balance, it is absolutely critical. Because if you produce embarrassingly good results at work, you come back to a dysfunctional family. In fact, you are a successful failure. What if you are palleted, highlighted, and celebrated at work, and your own children despise you because you can't even wash your own dishes? You leave socks everywhere. You don't even know how to clean the bedroom you sleep in. It's not really quite successful, is it? So early on, to make these trade-offs about what is it that you are prepared to do, but also what are the things that you will not do. For instance, I love golf, but I'm not Tiger Woods.
So
I have never...
What do you play off of?
24.
24.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I've never played golf outside Monday to Friday. Never. Because Saturday and Sunday, for me, it's family time. I spend a lot of time Monday to Friday with my children not seeing me. Saturday, Sunday, wherever they want to go, I go with them. They're girls, so they do lots of mall crawling. I crawl the malls with them. They watch movies. I watch movies with them because I understand that's what fathers do. I bought a holiday home at a small place called Semola Golfing Estate in Knysna. It's probably in the top 10 golfing venues in the world. I've never taken my golf clubs when I go to Semola. I do this every year from the 1st of December for 4 weeks. I've never played golf there because I understand that going on holiday is to spend time with your family, not to follow your own hobbies. So it's just those trade-offs that you are prepared to make. A lot of my friends, they will invite me and say, can we play golf every Saturday, tee off? For me, if you want me to play golf, Monday to Friday, in Shell's time, not in family's time, because it's very uncomfortable to sleep on the floor.
So we have we have interesting conversations. By the way, you'll see the slide coming up. We have a show on Cliff Central every Thursday, 2 to 3 p.m. And in one of those conversations, this work-life balance question came up. And one of the guests that was on there, also a CEO, but she's in the a little bit more public area, in a supportive organization or supporting organization, she said that she doesn't believe in balance. She believes in a harmony, a choir, pulling it all together so that it flows nicely. So this idea that you can balance things is difficult because there are different notes at different points in the rhythm of your life, right? And this is what she highlighted. So this idea of balance, let's push it away. There's always a cost, but let's just try and string it all together so that it works and it flows very nicely. You've spoken about a book. Just recommend a couple of books for these guys to be reading, and myself, of course. But
yes, I'm naughty that way. If I wasn't buying so many books, I'll probably be a wealthy man. I'm a voracious reader, so I mall crawl, and when they're busy, I find myself at exclusive books, because CNA doesn't have as much an array as I used to enjoy. So I read lots of books. Whenever I'm traveling, it's normally a 10.5-hour flight. I hardly ever sleep. I read until I pick my book somewhere at the bottom of the floor somewhere. So the one that I'm really enjoying, probably for the last 4 years, and I keep on going back to it, is The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. This is his 5th book. I like it because of its simplicity, but also its practicality. There's a notion there where it talks about 100,000 hours, 10,000 hours, 10,000 hours. That before you can really become a world authority on something, you must have done it more than 3, 4, 5 times. That if you attempt something for the first time, of course it looks cumbersome. The other one I like is James C. Collins and Jerry I. Porras, and how they string a number of concepts, from Tom Peters' In Search of Excellence, and then with Nesty Austin, A Passion for Excellence. These guys ended up with a book called Good to Great. But the one that I really loved is the one called Build to Last. So in chapter 2, they talk about this notion of big, hairy, audacious goals. But in chapter 4, they talk about the tyranny of the O, O-R, the genius of the end, A-N-D. This notion of holding 2 conflicting ideas in your head at the same time and still be able to function. To give you an example, outsourcing, insourcing, leadership, management. Instead of being an or question, I can either be a charismatic leader or a consultative, participative leader. But why choose when you can have both? This notion of both and together at the same time, simultaneously, concurrently, and in parallel, rather than A or B. Can you have A and B? This notion that you can be committed as a CEO to transformation and increase profitability, to being very global and still rooted in your local roots, that you can be very African and black and proud and practice your culture and still fit in dining with queens, kings, and emperors, and yet you don't lose your humility.
No, very, very nice. Very well said. Thank you for sharing. I hope you got those books. Here's another question. Ntabi Singh. Ntabi Singh? There you are. Ntabi Singh asked... Ntabi Singh? Yes. She has asked, who's been a role model to you?
I've got many role models, from the late Lord Maduke Kacheni Ndlovu, who was the president of the BMF, by the way, and became the managing director of the BMF at some stage. But the one role model that has shaped who I am, who is responsible single-handedly for the fact that I'm not in prison, but at Shell, is Susan Mohale, my lovely wife. 24th of August, we'll be happily married for 34 glorious years. So you can figure out my youth from there. She's the most amazing human being. Humble, yet strong. Homely, and yet very worldly. Absolutely committed to her two divine daughters, Tsepiso Maneo, and very loving. A partner, a compatriot. Sometimes I share with her trials and tribulations at work. She's a social worker by profession. But her simplicity of her advice, in Shanga Pagat.
Yeah, we can give you a minute. On the back of that, let me ask this question. What was the last question you asked to your mentor? How about that for a nice question? What's the last question you asked to your mentor?
Couldn't somebody design a better, easier, simpler life? Why did God have to give us a cow instead of a cheese? I mean, it would have been easier, just to get solutions. But for me, it's trying to figure out our role and how we fit in like a jigsaw puzzle within a broader scheme of things.
So that was what you asked your mentor. Now, now I want to just push it a little further and tell us the difference, because we may sit here and we get confused between the role of a mentor and a role of a coach. What's the difference? Why if I approach you and I say, Bonang, please, I'd like you to mentor me, what am I actually asking you? What are your thoughts?
So the way I think about it simplistically is that a coach is somebody that you work with, who works with you to make sure that you become a better person in what you do at work. A mentor is somebody outside of the organization that you can talk to about anything and everything when life is really hard. When you're having absolute joy and your heart wants to burst and you want to share the news with somebody, this is the person that you go to. And you talk with this person. Typically, in my instance, I've got 18 women that I've been mentoring in my career, because what we need in business is more women, not more men, and only 4 men. It's typically 3 things. So we talk first and foremost about me, myself, I. So when I mentor you, you talk about yourself, your headspace, where do you want to go, but what you want out of life, not just at work, not just at school. The second thing we talk about is family, because nobody is an island. Nobody came from up above. All of us have siblings, and siblings love you. Sometimes they make you cry. Some of us have parents, and parents are very demanding, but also they love unconditional. And then if you're in business, lastly, in that order, we then talk about business. Sometimes a challenge you have, sometimes it's a presentation you want to make, you want to bounce it off somebody. Sometimes it's somebody who just wanted to make you resign from your job. And before you do something stupid and say, let me go and talk to my mentor. And then we talk about it. Like hardships, like problems, anything shared, more often than not, is halved. When you're alone and difficulties look like they are overcoming, all you need is just to talk to somebody. As you talk to somebody, before they open their mouth, you feel better already. And it doesn't look so bad, because time is the greatest healer.
Okay. Now, speaking of time, that was is that your way of dropping a hint here? We are running out of time, unfortunately. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then if you guys do have another question, get it through onto Slido as quickly as possible, and we'll ask it. Here's my question. Please put yourself, just go back, put yourself in the young 20-year-old future CEO you. You as that, and you're sitting across from you, what would you say to that individual if you were able to speak to him?
You know, most things don't make sense at the time that you need them. When you get advice, it doesn't make sense. But later on, it actually makes sense. I'll give you an example. The day you have your own families, you'll appreciate why your mothers did some of the things that they did with you or things that they told you. So when you get to the world of work, it might not make sense now. Sometimes it is more useful to get the training you want rather than leave for 600 rand more. It doesn't make sense now. Do remember it. At some stage when you're confronted with two choices, to stay in the company where you've been for the last 4 years, and they can train you to be a supervisor, manager, or somebody who wants your services now for extra 600 rand, I've always found, without fail, to go for the training, for the longevity, for the tenure, rather than the extra 600 rand. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense when you want a Golf GTI or a BMW. It does not make sense when you are struggling to pay your rent in an apartment that you share with a friend and colleague. It doesn't make sense when you don't know how you are going to balance your credit card, whether to pay for your car or to buy food. But just remember those words.
And again, another supporting statement. I haven't met her yet. Sheryl Sandberg, I think she's the COO of Facebook, and she said, don't go into an organization or into a position for the money. You go there to learn. You go there to upskill yourself, to develop yourself. I think that supports what you're saying here as well. So, yeah, I mean, wow to you. So we've got these big names saying it, and you're saying it as well. Here's a last question, and then we're gonna wrap up for this evening. In your youthful days, how were you able to stand out from the crowd? Noella, where are you, Noella? So Noella's asking, how were you able to stand out from the crowd? Great question.
To really make a difference, it always helps to swim against the current, like salmons. So I went to Wits Medical School when I could have gone to the University of Natal, Wentworth Black Section. I could have gone to Medunsa. That was an institution that was designed, built, constructed for black medical students. And I came from Katlehong. I'm a product of Bantu education through and through. But I said, you know what, I am as good as the best. And I want to go to a white institution to compete with absolutely the best. This is 1981. So you apply to Wits, they accept you, and then you have to get a special ministerial consent from the Minister of Interior. So that year, 26 black students applied to go to Wits, classified as a white institution. By April, pre-university started in January. February, university started. You need a card, called a student card, to allow you to eat lunch and to borrow books from the library. We couldn't. Our consent to only 17 who applied came in April. So we're already behind. But that's the choice that I made, to say, can I really put myself out there to compete with absolutely the best? I was a stone thrower. I was a member of COSAS. We were activists. When I was in Standard 10, we were part of the group of 1976 who hit a Coca-Cola truck with a brick so straight that it couldn't move. When I went to Wits, a lot of my friends went on to join the ANC as the party in waiting. I looked at this and say, there are so many of us. We're going to compete and kill each other, trying to get political positions. You know what? I'll go to medical school, depend on my technical competence, not on my struggle credentials to make it in life. Today, I run Shell. I've run Otis. I've run South African Airways. I've started a company called Dragon Skull Integrated Facilities Management, part of the Tsebo outsourcing group. Even if you hate me, you cannot deny me the results, extraordinary results that are achieved, because I've always known that to make a difference, you need to go the extra mile, to put in the hour, to do a little bit of application, but also look at where the head is going. And sometimes it's okay to go the opposite direction, to stand out, stick out like a sore thumb. Trevor Mdaga is a friend of mine. We did medicine. I wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. He said, you know what? There are not very many African nuclear physicists. That's what I want to be. Today, Trevor Mdaga is still the only nuclear physicist in the country.
Your question's answered. Okay, great. Well, Bonang, thank you for being with us. We have run out of time. It's been a piece of advice every second here. And again, I hope you guys have been writing down, memorizing. But we so appreciate you for taking the time to come and mentor us. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, we will all be following you a lot closer to see the more results, like you've just mentioned. So thank you very much. I think a warm round of applause for him. So thank you.
The accent is good.
Thank you. Thank you.